Hello, everyone. Welcome to the July 21st as a service binding operator weekly developer call. We have some things on the agenda, and feel free to add news as you see fit. So I see that Baiju has two things, and David is just adding it. So I would suggest that move the issue triaging till the end. Unless it's something specific. Baiju, are you fine with that?
Yeah, actually, there is no new issues, and we did gone through most of the issues last. I have a particular issue that I want to discuss. That's the next topic.
Okay.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
part
So
of kind of issue
let's
triage.
right,
Yeah,
right. So let's start with that. Just move this like general triaging.
yeah. Depending on time, we can go through more. Okay.
Mhm.
Yeah. So this was some issue that was opened, I think, long back from. Okay, hey, what is the name? Thomas, right? Yeah. So the idea was to, he's what he is looking forward was to have a kind of native binding to hem charts, which I completely disagree that we can give anything a binding to hem chart. But that was his proposal, and that made clear in the subsequent comments. If you scroll down, you can see that. Please take a moment to read that this comment from him. Right. Yeah. So what he is looking for is something like similar to how we specify the services, which is a resource in the our Kubernetes cluster, right? Whereas Hem is not. Hem is a completely a client-side operation that is happening. So that means technically it is not. Uh, I mean, with the current architecture, we cannot give anything like the last section. Point is making something like services point to Hem into MyDB. This is my understanding right now. So my thought is I put a comment again, scroll down. Yeah, one of the idea that we could give indirectly, that is through that service endpoint definition. That was something that we worked on, but otherwise not really direct support for hem charts as a backing service, or So this is my thought. I would like to hear. Yeah, you can see his comment again, but
It's a
this is my
separate.
thought. I want to.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for Helm chart. I mean, think about it. We're struggling with operators, which are well defined. You know, here's the CR. I'm gonna reconcile that CR, and all the fields are there, right?
Yeah.
Imagine Helm chart. There's no CR in most of the Helm charts, right?
Yeah, it's a complete
Uh,
client side, no
so
server side. It
we
was.
have no idea
Mm,
what fields. It's just normal Kubernetes resources, right? There's no specific CR abstracting everything, right? So the only way is for the Helm chart itself to deploy the secret, right? And then at that point, um, you know, how do we know the service binding is gonna just get to the secret? Service binding has no watch for secrets, right? And we don't want to do that either, right? So how do we implement this? I mean, it has to be something that the service provider will be very the chart provider will be very we need to understand service binding and include the service binding object in the Helm chart, pointing to the secret that gets generated by the Helm chart. You know what I mean? So that's the only way I see where, okay, yeah, Helm chart is out of the box supporting service binding, but it's because the chart itself contains a service binding CR pointing to a secret that they choose to expose, right? So that's the only way I can see it. You see what I mean?
yeah, so that means since there is no server side components or like a custom resource or anything of that
Exactly.
sort,
Right.
we and with our current architecture, there is no way that we can provide
Watch
any kind of
for specific secrets. I mean, if we
Yeah.
could watch for a secret with a specific label, for example, that might work. But I don't know if we can do that. And then we can make that distinction. Say, oh, maybe we can just put it. But
I
but
don't
what do you
want to
do?
keep
But what do you do?
at least
You put
at
in.
least I don't want to keep more hope for this issue and keep hanging around. I would like to propose to close this issue and we are not going to
No,
consider
no.
at least for
What
time
we can
being.
do, we could suggest. I think send me the link. I'll suggest it. What we suggest is like, hey, if
879, right?
if the Helm chart, is yeah. So if the Helm chart owner wants to do service binding out of the box, they should create the service binding automatically to a specific label then, and then let the workloads do the label selection part, right?
Yeah, that label selector approach makes sense, that, but it is not directly binding, but it gives a benefit of, keeping your everything in a hem, but at the same time, your actual resource comes up later matching that label, right?
Yeah,
So,
that's normal, right?
yeah,
We're
that's normal.
supposed
So
to
probably
support.
that could be a solution, some of the, his issue that he might be looking forward, right? So we could give that suggestion with the label selector idea,
That's it. Yeah.
and then we could
Close.
close this issue. Yeah.
Yep. Yep.
Please do then. Yeah, if you can give a
Okay.
comment on that.
I will comment on
Yeah.
and close it. Yeah.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, we can go back to next topic, David, and see depending on the time.
Yeah. So I noticed when I was doing some testing, you guys there? Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks, Paul.
Yeah, send the link to the chat.
Yeah. Thanks, Paul. That's useful. Quick. Okay. Let me put it in my screen here. Okay. So I noticed. What are we?
So are we going with the next topic, or is it?
Yeah,
the
the next
comments
topic.
to
The next topic.
Okay,
the
next topic. So,
Okay, so
go ahead.
So I noticed when I was doing some testing that the secret is always there in the service binding object, but the timing is a little bit off in my opinion. I'd like to hear from the rest of the folks here. The secret only makes it when we project to at least one resource, right? But let's say going back to this label selector scenario where the service binding resource points to a service or a secret directly, right? And on the workload side points to a label selector. It'd be nice that state of that service binding resource. I'm calling it a service reservation, right? So meaning you're reserving the service ahead of time with the label so that workloads in the future can come in and use it, right? As opposed to the idea that we've been seeing in ODC, which is, you create a service, you create an application, and then you link it. No, this idea is like, I'm going to reserve ahead of time that service for my group to bind to it, right? Via label selector. When that reservation is done, it'll be nice to search for the reservation, right? But to search for the reservation, if it's a provision service, no problem, because I have reference to the provision service, and then the provision service has a secret always, right, by default. So in that state, I could, if it's a provision service, no problem. But if it's one of the annotation scenarios, what I notice is I have no way to know the secret until a workload comes in and binds, right? So I cannot really search for, okay, here are the different services that has been already reserved with this label, and by the way, these are the fields that it exposes, right? So what I'm proposing is, can we change that status display to be there when the data collection is done, not when the service binding is done, not when the projection is done? And if that's possible, maybe I can just create a story and start working on it on the next spring. We'll plan it.
Yeah. So
Well,
basically,
it's-
in a summary, as soon as the provision service is ready, we need to set the status with that secret, right? That's it.
Does that make sense? Does that make sense? I think it makes sense to me.
Yeah, it's okay, completely fine. I'm fine.
Okay.
Yeah, I think also once the collection is done, then all the data fields and everything is ready and can be
Right. Display, right?
put into the secret, and then we can reference the secret even if it is not mounted to anywhere else, right?
Yep, exactly.
So
Right.
makes sense.
And if you think about it, with label selectors, you're never done projecting. So, because there might be other workloads that come later, a week later, and then you still. So I mean, the state, I think it makes sense of the data collection. So if everyone agrees, I think I'll create a story, and the story
Right.
I put it under improving discovery, right? Because and then the discovery in this case is going to be way easier for a developer because it's just going to be looking for service binding objects that reserve. Reserve is what I'm calling. Some other people call it claim, right? That reserve a service with a label, right? So, and I'm gonna try to also once this idea, once this is done, I think this is one of the only things that we need to do to start working with ODC, for example, on audio, to start adding tools for the reservation search. The only concern I have with the reservation search is permissions, and I'd like to talk a little bit about that as well. So the reservation search will search for the binding object and then the label and then the secret fields. But for that to be possible, the person searching, the user searching, has to have access to the secret. However, in the spec, that's not explicit, right? So the user does not have to have access to a secret to be able to use the binding, right? Is that correct?
Access will be required at when it is not very expect doesn't speak about that. I mean,
Right.
there is an option that there is a one possibility they are suggesting. They're using may. That means further security can be added apart from RBAC. So there is a clause like that in this spec. So that means it is completely okay to add additional security mechanisms, I guess. Yeah.
But my question is, would most users have that permission to be able to, I mean, let's say they're in a namespace, right? Most likely they can access everything, including secrets. So, and then they'll be searching for, okay, let me see this in my namespace, the service binding objects that represent a reservation, right? And then from there, they should have access to the secret. So if audio creates a tool to search for reservations, I think that should be possible, right?
I haven't got the last part. What is it?
So audio, if audio, let's say I have this.
Okay, audio. Okay, yeah.
I have this in batch script, right? So a batch script that I already do this, and it displays, it goes through all the service binding objects, and it looks at the labels, displays the labels, displays the fields, and then a user could potentially say, "Oh, nice service. It has the fields that I need. I'm just gonna start using that label in my deployments, right?" And then whatever Helm chart, when they deploy the Helm chart, that's the label they use, right? And then the magic happens. This is what I think SBO shines, right? Which is you're looking at SBO the same way as a Kubernetes service binds to a deployment set, right, with all the pods, right? So that magic is don't be a label matching. So we're being very Kubernetes driven with this approach, right? So I think it's fine. I'm gonna continue with that idea, and then I'll create a story. I think that's the only thing we need to do. If you look at the experience document that I created, the only thing we need to do to realize that is that feature, which is I don't think it's hard.
I would like to check, maybe Andy, you already started looking into that reference implementation, whether this behavior happened the same way in that implementation also. It It would be interesting to see how they are
The
implemented.
label selector, I think, is there in the rest of
Yeah, level
implementation.
sector is there, but I mean this as soon as this production service is ready, that binding the secret
Oh,
is
good
already set to
question.
the status or not.
Yeah, good question. Yeah, yeah.
So it. I mean, that way, the consistency. I don't see any reason not to do that. Like we just now discussed. So if it is there, that's great. Otherwise, we can create an issue in that reference implementation tracker, and we can work on that.
Yeah. Oh, actually, that's a good point. I won't be able to make the call today. But Andy, will you be able to make it with the work group?
Should be able. I should be there.
Okay. Can you bring this up? And
But we can check whether it's implemented like that or not first, right?
well, we can ask the implementer that knows exactly
Okay. Okay then.
how it works.
Yeah.
Well, or you can look at the code and get familiar with that as well. That's a good idea. So
Yeah. Feel
Okay.
free to do whatever convenient for you. I'm not that familiar with that code because I find it's really bit complex with that all those dependencies. So we need more time to understand. So yeah.
Yeah, it's at the risk of getting off topic. Yeah, it's definitely a different beast from what SBO is.
Yeah. Okay.
Right,
Anyway,
so
it's worth
have we-
checking that. Yeah.
Have we expanded the topic already?
yeah, I think we're done.
Okay, so if there's no other additional topic, we can check the other issues.
Yeah.
So I have this filter which says all the issues that has been updated within the last week. So you can take a look. So
This was something that I updated probably. Scroll down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes,
I
so
mentioned
this-
that the fix I'm working on. So
This is a
for
Percona one?
1.2. Yeah, the permission thing. Yeah.
Okay. And they will explicitly add a test that covers this case in the issue?
You mean with the which is connecting to this Percona DB?
No, just
Okay.
any web service that it doesn't have to be Percona, right? Any web service that uses TLS will have this problem, right? If the
well,
if
since
certificate-
since it's a sort of bug report from external user, we should include a test case that covers the exact case. Not
Okay.
just
Can
not
you-
just extend some scenario that we already have to claim that the scenario is. We need to make sure that the issue which has been reported is fixed for the customer or whatever.
Right.
For the
Can you add a
one.
comment right away in the PR? Open the PR.
Sure.
Add this comment. No, not here. In the PR.
Yeah, okay.
It's there. It's the link is there. Add a test case for that particular issue number 1.
yeah, that's a good idea. Because that way we know, we're solving the problem. And then are we taking action on them on Percona, or we're letting them take action?
No, I will try to do the same thing. It's not Percona. It is what is the other operator? Crunchy, right? That's what you mentioned, no?
Crunchy.
Yeah, Crunchy. I think we have test case already, right, Pavel?
Yes, but not with this.
Yeah,
not with
not with
TLS.
this, but but that means we are installing and testing it. So definitely we can extend or maybe create another one, cloning that existing one. I'll check on that. Yeah.
All the tests that we have for Crunchy is just to check that the binding is created and that it works. Nothing else.
Oh.
The most basic one.
But no,
I doesn't use the
it was a client side thing, right? So because they were not able to, I think it was a certificate or.
Yeah, it is a certificate thing. So I think basically this is required if you want to make this connection secure. Basically, it will be unsecured without TLS, right? The connection. So now he's attempting to use the TLS to secure the connection. So that means the test case would be very different, I guess. So we need to check.
And does the issue happens when the database is being initialized or
No,
once client attempts connection.
client connection. So the client connection requires a certificate, right? But the certificate is, I think it's a private key in this case because it's a mutual TLS. The private key, when it's used to connect, it needs to have certain permissions, right? So that's what I'm saying. Maybe we don't need to. I mean, this is a normal TLS thing. So if it's easier, we can just create a normal TLS scenario with any service. Doesn't have to be Corona, in my opinion. And then as long as the client side works, then it works, right? Because it's just the protocol that we're validating, right? Yeah.
Right. So it is the application trying to connect to the database which fails. Okay.
Exactly.
it.
So in that case, if you can create like a little service that does the TLS, you know what I mean? That might work.
Okay, which expects this kind of permission.
It's the same mutual authentication, right? So that's the challenge. That's the challenge.
Yeah.
The one reported the issue is in Red Hat, part of Red Hat. So I guess you can ask him or her for the application, sources, so we can use them to inspire the testers.
Okay.
Ideally, I use the very same if they have an image for it, right, somewhere. So. Okay. So there has been an update to this binding MongoDB per Kona distribution. Okay, so this should be covered by the blog. And the blog has not been published yet, so we are still waiting for that to happen. Sorry. Another thing, service binding operator cannot project bindings to jobs.
Yeah, that's not gonna happen, right?
Yeah. I think we can close it.
We can close
no,
this.
We are going to work on that or not?
No.
Andy was talking about that, having that
webhook. I don't think we want to work on that. No.
We don't want to work on. Okay.
That's just weird. I mean, let me create a job. I don't know. Can we ask him for a scenario? I think that's the other thing. We can say, hey, can you give me a scenario where you directly create a job?
I think this is Predrag who opened it.
Yeah, I think we need to search and understand if a job supporting binding to a job has that user scenario that David that you're talking about, right? So we need to kind of dig a little deeper in that. But I think Project was doing this as part of something, another investigation. So I don't know if this was anything specific. But yeah, okay.
Okay. See, if you are supporting job, we can even support pod also. Right now, we are not supporting pod, right? That because pod is also immutable, right?
Right.
Yes.
So,
it's the same idea.
I think the meta issue here is how do we bind workloads that can't be mutated after creation,
right?
And as far as I understand, the only real way to do it is to modify them at emission time. For context, I believe the new reference implementation supports this for jobs, but I don't remember specifically. I could be wrong on that.
I remember that discussion too. Yeah. So maybe the reference implementation supports it.
Yeah, they supports it, but there is an order of execution that is they're relying on. So that means job is like instantaneous, right? It comes up and goes away. So that means you are supposed to create the binding first, and then only you should create the job. So the order of execution is critical.
So let me ask you. Yeah, it doesn't. It's because it's out of. Yeah.
We should ask probably Predrag to elaborate on why he requested that.
I mentioned that already down. See my comment if anyone has any use case to you.
Right. Well, yeah. Anyone, but all of us plus Predrag, we are only involved in this issue. So I think we should ask Predrag directly.
I think one of the motivating factors for this was we just wanted to support more styles of workloads. I think this is where that was coming from. There could be some other things that he was thinking of that I wasn't aware of.
Well, let's ask him. I think we should. Hey, Predrag, what scenarios were you thinking when
I think
when you thought about this?
I think that this came up when we were starting to look into the workload resource mapping feature to implement it, and the jobs were the one that we are trying because that's one of the available non-pod-spec resources, right?
No, that was cron job. The cron job, not the job.
Right, but when you are trying the cron job and those jobs are created by or through the cron jobs, and that is
should
when
work.
he realized that.
But the cron job is mutable, right?
Yeah.
So you could always create a cron job that starts right now and finishes, right? And then so basically is like you will always have to create a cron job to run the job to be able to do binding, right? So I think is what's going on. But I mean, I know the timing is separate. I mean, sometimes you want a job right now, you don't want to schedule it, right? But that would be a workaround. Another workaround is to create your own CR that handles the same idea that pods do, right? Like a maybe it's not a cron job, but maybe it's real-time job or something like that, right? Where I just want the job right now, right? But you're not like deployments, right? I just want the deployment right now, but we don't create the pod directly, right? So
Okay, I think our time.
I think
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So time's up. So let's wait for any comment here, and if there are any issues you want to put up right now, I would say thanks and see you next time.
all right, take care.